I'm sure you've seen videos of producers making a beat and been surprised at how easily they can make a melody. It seems like they open up a plugin, open the piano roll, click seemingly random notes, and in less than a minute have a great sounding melody or chord progression. To learn the secrets, I interrogated top producers. Now, I work with a multi-platinum Grammy nominated production team every day, and our melody packs have been used by over 100,000 producers. I'm going to teach you sound selection, the root notes, the chord progressions, making the melodies, the mixing and mastering, and there won't be any confusing over-the-top music theory, just the essentials you need to know to make great melodies. So I like to break down the melody creation process into 3 simple steps. You have the chord progressions, the counter melodies, and the supporting melodies. The first thing to do is pick a preset or one shot. I'm going to grab FL keys, for example, because it's a very easy way to start. And most DAWs have some kind of setting or tool where the notes in the background show a specific scale. So in FL Studio, I want to click this arrow, I'm going to click view, I'm going to go down to scale highlighting, I'm going to click minor natural, and as you can see now we're in C minor. So all the notes showing up in this piano roll as ghost notes are the correct notes in the scale. Each DAW has very similar tools, so try and find the one that works for you. Now once you've picked your scale, you're going to go and place the root notes down for the melody. Now the root notes are the most important because they carry the whole kind of vibe and emotion of the track. If you have a kind of sad descending root note, the whole melody is going to sound kind of sad and depressing, whereas if it's ascending, it's going to be a little bit happier, and happy kind of pop melodies tend to have a happy resolution at the end, whereas more mysterious trap and hip-hop melodies sometimes end on a black note or sound kind of mysterious, like there's no real resolution. So now that I have these root notes, I'm going to go and create chords around these root notes. If you feel that the emotion, the feeling, the vibe, and the whole emotional journey of your melody isn't what you want, the first thing I recommend looking at is your root notes and changing those around. So this is the teeny bit of music theory you need to know. If there's 2 notes between the first and second note, and 3 notes between the second and third, it's a minor chord. Whereas if there's 3 notes between the first and second note, and 2 notes between the second and third, just like this, it's a major chord. You'll notice that minor chords tend to sound a bit more dark, whereas major chords are very happy and uplifting. And since we selected the C minor scale, this major chord technically isn't correct. If you have a look at the notes in the background, it's saying basically we can't actually place anything on that note, and it's redirecting us to do a minor chord. There's a couple more things you can actually do to these chords if you're not happy with it. If you move the middle note up or down an octave, it inverts the chord. If you bring the middle note up, it makes it a suspended chord. If the middle and top note both come down 1, it's a diminished chord. If you bring the top note up 1, it becomes a suspended chord. And you can also make it a 7th, 9th, or 11th chord by going and adding the 7th, 9th, or 11th note in the scale. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is a 7th. This is a 9th. And this is an 11th. So by going and roughly following some music theory, I turn these root notes into this chord progression. You can see this note here technically isn't in the scale, but I think it sounds very cool and mysterious, so I decided to keep it in. Now that you have this finished chord progression, you can go and add a supporting melody or a counter melody. In my head, a supporting melody is essentially some notes in the background that follow the kind of vibe and rhythm of the chord progression, whereas a counter melody is kind of going against the melody notes or leading into the next chord. So to give you an example, I'm going to go and grab the lowest notes, hold down Shift, which is going to duplicate it, and drag it down an octave. So now we have these root notes, and I'm going to go and add a counter melody, which I usually like to place up at a higher octave. This can change the whole vibe of the melody. If you listen to this first chord here, it's kind of like a normal sounding chord, but if you have this G here, it can actually sound really cool, and you can go and completely change the emotion of it. So I added this counter melody at the top here, and one important thing you want to keep in mind when making counter melodies is making sure that the note it hits on when the next chord comes in is at least one of the notes in the chord. So as you can see, we have this lead up here to this chord here, and it's hitting on the same note as the root note of that chord, which makes it sound really good. Whereas if it was still technically in scale, but it wasn't a note in that chord, it can sound a bit weird. There's no rules when creating melodies, but following these guidelines, it tends to sound better most of the time. I sliced this note here in this chord, just gonna technically add this as another note. Kind of counts as a counter melody, so listen to how this sounds here. You can go and slice chords in different points like this to make it more intense. Now this melody sounds good. I like FL keys, but it's a very, very boring kind of sound compared to what we can make, especially if we're going for a kind of trap hip hop style melody. So I'm gonna grab a different sound. So from here, I like to split up the melody. So I have this sound here, which sounds very good and wide. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually take out a lot of these melodies up the top. So this one is basically just the chord progression. And I have this other melody. I'm going to delete all of these root notes down the bottom. I also added this other kind of just piano melody up on the top. It can be good to have lots of layers, not because more necessarily means better, but because it allows you when arranging the melody to have different layers come in and out, and you can add evolution in your track. I usually don't have more than 2 melody layers coming in at a time, but if I want to have some kind of intense intro, because there's no real drums in the intro, I tend to put all of the melody layers there to make it sound a bit more interesting, and then when the verse comes in, I take out all the melody layers except for some of the really basic ones like this. And the drums can go crazy, and the artist rapping on it can go crazy. And then when the hook comes in and it has to be wider and bigger and more exciting, that's when I like to bring in some of the other layers. So I'm going to select all of them, go into this mixer track, Control-Shift-L, which is going to add all of them to the mixer track. Now I'm going to go through one by one and add some effects and EQ to each of them. I'm going to cut off some of the lows. And as you can see, the melody sounds basically the same, but all of these lower frequencies here aren't going to be clashing with the beat. I just grabbed these drum loops out of the Emotional Essence library. The link is in the description if you want to check it out. And I'm going to create an 808 pattern. I'm just going to grab an 808. So I added this 808 sequence here. I'm going to show you how to actually go and arrange melodies. So first we're going to split it up into separate channels. Click here, shift, and then drag all of these in. So the melody here is coming in on its own for 8 bars at the start. Then we have this kind of verse here, but for the 16 bars, we've actually taken out some of the melody layers. So at the start here, this Electra X and this Contact is taken out. Then 8 bars later, we have them play a couple notes and then cut out again. I think it's important in the verse to not go over the top with the melody, because this is when the main focus is on the artist. And then for the kind of hook or chorus, we have all of the layers coming in. And with the clipper, we're just going to make everything sound a bit louder. That's how you can very, very easily make melodies with using barely any music theory. If you want to create different genres of music, just go and select a different scale when you're actually making the melody, and this is going to change the whole vibe of it. Remember, if you choose major, most of the chords are going to be major chords, which sound a lot more uplifting, whereas minor chords tend to sound a bit more mysterious and are better for hip hop and trap. The sounds I used in this video are all from the Emotional Essence library, which is 90% off. There's over 10,000 royalty-free samples, MIDI, and 8 free bonuses, so I'll leave the link below if you want to download it. I hope you make some amazing melodies with these strategies, and I'll see you in the next video.